The federal government may be just one day away from closing down for lack of funds. With the House of Representatives voting tonight on a spending bill and Senate's support crumbling, the ultimate outcome is anything but clear. Lisa Desjardins reports on how the day played out.
Over the Capitol, the gathering winds of a possible shutdown, because inside, only one funding bill was on the table.
This is a 15-minute vote.
And it was in trouble.
Stop playing games.
The numbers just aren't there. This is a sad day.
The House Republican bill would fund government for a month, suspend several Obamacare medical taxes for up to 2 years, and to woo votes, it would fund the popular Children's Health Insurance Program, or CHIP, for 6 years. But that bill had problems in both parties. Republican members of the House Freedom Caucus, as well as some Senate Republicans, said short-term spending bills are too harmful for the military, and they threatened to vote no. President Trump was at the Pentagon today to underscore the GOP's point.
If for any reason it shuts down, the worst thing is what happens to our military.
Democrats similarly threatened to vote no, but because there is no deal on how to protect DACA recipients. Those are people brought here illegally as children.
Try to explain this.
One sure sign that a shutdown was closer, the escalating blame game. Republican Speaker Paul Ryan pointed to Democrats, especially on the other side of the Capitol.
If the Senate Democrats want to shut the government down, if the Senate Democrats want to deny funding for our troops, if the Senate Democrats want to stop CHIP funding for unrelated issues, that's a choice they would make. I don't think it's a good choice for them to make.
House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi pointed to Republicans, saying they've ignored DACA and other non-defense issues.
If I had to say what the main holdup in all of this is the lack of willingness on the part of Republicans in Congress to support a domestic agenda increase as they support a military increase. This is like giving you a bowl of doggy-doo, put a cherry on top and call it a chocolate sundae. This is nothing.
To this stormy divide, President Trump himself added even more turbulence, initially seeming to tweet against the House funding bill, writing that CHIP should be part of a long-term solution. One Republican leader tweeted back to tell the president the CHIP portion of the bill is, in fact, a long-term deal. The White House later clarified the president supports the House bill. Later, touring a business in Pennsylvania, the president said Democrats want a shutdown to undermine his success.
I really believe the Democrats want a shutdown to get off the subject of the tax cuts because they've worked so well.
As for the chances of a shutdown,
we'll see what happens.
On the House floor, by the afternoon, Oklahoma's Tom Cole made a plea to both parties to pass the one-month bill.
Facts do matter here. And the fact of the matter is, anyone who votes no on this resolution is voting to shut down the government.
There are now just over 24 hours for lawmakers to work out a deal before some government functions begin to shut down.
And we get a deeper look now at the government shutdown fight with Lisa. She's joining us from Capitol Hill, and Yamiche Alcindor. Hello to both of you. So, Lisa, I'm dizzy listening to all this. Where does everything stand right now?
We actually have some breaking news, Jody. Just minutes ago, our Capitol Hill producer, Julie Percher, was outside a meeting with the Freedom Caucus and Speaker Paul Ryan. Freedom Caucus, the conservative group leader, Mark Meadows, says the Speaker has offered him a deal to add more for the Defense Department in this CR. They don't say what that is exactly, but the Freedom Caucus chairman says he likes that deal. He's going to take it back to his conference. And Judy, I think what this means is that passage of this short-term spending bill has become much more likely in the House tonight. But that is not the end game here. There are still very serious problems in the Senate. And in fact, let's look at the no votes we learned about today in a graphic. Republican no votes that we know of publicly: Lindsey Graham, Rand Paul, Mike Rounds. And we also think Mike Lee may in fact be a no vote, just not stated yet. But there are also Democratic no votes. These are 5 Democrats who voted yes in December, Judy. They are all no votes now. Why does that matter? Because you figure out the math, and with John McCain absent, right now, Republicans need some 14 Democrats in the Senate to pass a short-term spending bill. With those 5 Democrats as a no, they don't have it. So this House bill is dead on arrival in the Senate. If that is the only bill in town, that means we will have a shutdown.
And I talked to, just a little while ago, to Senator Mike Rounds, a Republican, and we'll be playing that in a little bit on the program. But meantime, Yamiche, the other big player here is the president. How do you describe his role in all this today?
Historically, presidents are someone who are people who have helped broker deals. They've gone to visit the Hill and talked to people, had personal relationships with lawmakers that they could leverage into some sort of deals. In this case, President Trump has done the exact opposite. One, he doesn't have the relationships with lawmakers because he doesn't have a long history in politics. But two, there's this issue that he's essentially really thrown some bombs. So there's this idea that his immigration comments continue to be something that's a cloud that's hanging over a lot of the things that are happening on the Hill. And even today, the CBC and others were talking about censoring him. So there's this fact that the president is not helping this at all.
Congressional Black Caucus.
Yes.
You're referring to. Lisa, so what does this mean then for the next few days?
Okay. There are 2 options here. One is that there is a different bill that somehow springs out of the ground here on Capitol Hill, as they can do, that might be a shorter-term funding bill, maybe 1 to 5 or 6 days. Now, Senator Cornyn's office told me today that they are rejecting that idea, but that's today. Tomorrow is the deadline, and there are some Republican senators I talked to today that think that is what could happen. That's option 1. If there is not that kind of new, shorter-term bill, then we will have a shutdown beginning tomorrow night at midnight. That will affect much of government, including many of the offices here on Capitol Hill. After that, the Senate will take a sort of procedural vote on the House bill. It will fail in the early morning of Saturday. And from there, Judy, honestly, we're not sure what happens next. There are many different talks, and I think we're still a little bit in limbo on this. I think expectations are that we very well could face a shutdown with a little bit of hope that something happens tomorrow to avoid it.
Well, we're all on the edge of our seats. So, Yamiche, I think we were already hearing about the blame game, and we know Democrats are saying it's the Republicans. We heard that from Nancy Pelosi. But the president and Republicans know they're going to be blamed. They're going to point fingers at the Democrats. But how is the president prepared to handle that?
Well, there are 2 things that are going on. The first is that the president essentially is already foreshadowing the message that he's going to have toward Democrats. He visited the Pentagon today, and he essentially said that our military is going to be at risk if the government shuts down. And he said essentially that we need the military more than ever. And I think most reporters hear that as a wink to North Korea and all the crises that we have going. The other issue is I think that the president has really contradicted his staff. If we go back to the idea that the role that he's playing in these conversations, John Kelly told people that he had evolved on the wall. His staff was saying that he is fully behind this thing. And then he's tweeting that actually he has not evolved on the wall. And the fact is that he is also tweeting about this idea of Chip not wanting to be part of the long-term deal. So there's this idea that the president is both foreshadowing messages while also making it harder to reach a deal.
So, and Lisa, quickly, what about the Democrats? How are they going to defend their role?
Right. Well, they sort of have a simple answer. They say Republicans are in charge, that they are the ones who run the House, Senate, and the White House. Of course, most Americans know that you need 60 votes in the Senate. And I think, Judy, that's the bottom line. We can see clearly what's happening here. Both parties are opposing a funding deal. Both parties would be responsible for a spending deal. And it's just your perspective on which you want to blame more.
Yeah, well, we are all eyes at this point, and the American people has to be watching this with great interest or something else.
Worry, probably. A lot of anxiety and worry.
Yamiche, Lisa, thank you both.